Welcome to NHA Today, where we explore the path to lasting health and fulfillment through a whole food, plant-based lifestyle. Each week, we bring you real conversations with doctors, health experts, and everyday individuals who've transformed their lives through food, mindset, and community. This is NHA Today, powered by the National Health Association.
All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the NHA podcast. I'm your guest host, Maxime Sigouin, founder and CEO of Fit Vegan Coaching. And today I have the great pleasure of speaking with someone who embodies the mission of NHA through her work, her wisdom, and her unwavering commitment to lifestyle medicine. Dr. Csilla Veress is a licensed naturopathic doctor and a passionate advocate for whole food plant-based nutrition. She's currently practicing at True North Health Center, where she helps patients reverse chronic disease through evidence-based holistic care. With her deep understanding of the body's natural healing ability, Csilla blends science and compassion to guide people back to vibrant health. Where she's speaking at conferences, where we had the opportunity to connect a few weeks ago at NHA, mentoring patients or educating the public, she's helping shift a paradigm from sick care to true health care. Csilla, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know we're going to have an interesting conversation today because I know a lot of people enjoy fasting, and we spoke before recording, and gut microbiome is going to be a topic that you're going to be very excited to talk about. So before we dive into these two, I say heated topic, but that people really enjoy, let's just do a little background as to what got you to the place of doing the work that you do and being so in love with wanting to serve people.
So I started off pre-med in college, and I had a really wonderful experience of having to work at a hospital, which it kind of blew away my whole concept of what I wanted to do, because what I really wanted to do was help heal and get everybody into this beautiful, like, kind of nature cure type of modality, but that's not what I saw in hospitals. And so I saw actually doctors and nurses sicker than even patients. And it was just a world that I became disillusioned. So I decided to go into advertising and marketing, which I know makes total sense after pre-med. And
complete
I was in
shift.
there, complete shift. I know. So it kind of landed in it, and I ended up just really kind of working through the ladder. And so, but what happened was I was really miserable. I was burning the candle at both ends. And as a result of that, I started getting into Pilates. I started getting into yoga. I did a nutrition program, and I started to build this, what I didn't know at the time, but this foundation for, kind of health. And I had enough. I broke, and I really realized I was soulless. I lost my soul. And so I got out of my career, and I just, for a minute, I started searching for other things. And I found Bastyr University, which is the medical school that I went to, and I found naturopathic medicine. And so when I read through the mission and value statements, and when I understood what naturopathic medicine was, I was like, that's what I was searching for over 10 years ago when I was looking into medicine. I just didn't realize it. And so when I went through medical training, when I was going through residency, it was actually serendipitous, to be honest with you, because I was very ingrained in cancer research and cancer treatment at in my medical school. And so I was thinking I'm going to the East Coast. My medical training was in Seattle, and I thought I was going to the East Coast for my residency in Cancer Treatment Centers of America. And my husband at the time was here in California. And so a residency at True North came up, and it was serendipitous because the residency director just kind of sent out this email and was like, is anybody interested? You have 1 week where you could come and interview. So I came as oh my gosh, if I could be closer to my husband, this makes total sense. I came to True North, I interviewed for a week, I got the residency, and I've been here ever since, because we've just, I mean this 100%, is that I see miracles every day. And every day I see people coming in and having information from their medical team saying, you can't heal this, you can't reverse that. You're going to be on meds your entire life. This is a cancer you're going to die from, whatever it is. And we see people doing the impossible with changing your diet, water fasting, just improving your lifestyle, everything you're doing too. It's like everything we're doing, we see impact every day. So it's addicting. It's addicting as a doctor. So.
Yeah, it truly is. And what I love about people's story that come to a place of wanting to serve is there's always that one pivotal moment in their story, which a lot of the time was the worst time of their life,
Yeah.
right? Like I felt soulless. I didn't feel like myself,
Yeah.
but it's always that pivotal moment where you start to dive deeper into like yoga, Pilates, like what can I do to kind of relax, right? And kind of be more in tune with myself. And
Yeah.
then you just kind of start to make all those connections. And what's the quote by Steve Jobs? You can't connect the dots looking forward, only looking backwards.
Yeah.
So it was a good thing that you went through all these things. You've helped a lot of people since then.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say this, I love what you just said, because when I think back to it, I don't think I would have been as an effective of a doctor if I didn't go through what I went through, because in that journey, I went through addiction. I went through, losing things that were really important to me. I struggled with eating out at restaurants and like like what people come to me with real life stuff. It's like I now have so much experience behind me that I say this to all my patients. I can see myself in every patient that walks through the door, man or woman, because there's something about their story where I'm like, I get that. Like I totally get that, or I've seen that, or I feel that, and that allows, when you have that beautiful connection, it connects us in a way where you're absolutely able to, like, I think, be able to be a better doctor, to hold space more, right? And that's where true healing, I think, happens too.
Yeah, there's more compassion, there's more empathy.
Totally.
And that's the difference between just having theoretical knowledge and having life experiences. That's what really allows you to understand, like, oh, I know what it's like to be sneaking in cookies at nighttime and when you're not supposed to, but that feeling of you're eating it, but you can't stop yourself from eating it, but you know you shouldn't be eating it. Like, you don't learn that in school. Like, you have to have gone through it and overcome it to be able to serve better, in my opinion.
And I saw in the NHA your story, and it's like, what resonated so much about your story is, like, similarly probably with you, is like, you're the person I want support from, because like you've come through the other side. And I feel like similarly, I feel like when I speak about something, you're going to get it, like, on some level, even if you didn't deal with exactly that thing, there's some level of connection that your story probably has provided for all the people you're helping. Right. And like that, I think that was so powerful, where I'm like, oh, he gets it. Like, he totally is going to get that, so I think it's amazing. It's like it's like what you said, the compassion piece, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. It just creates that deeper connection with people, and they know that you get it. So what made you want to go specifically to True North? I know there was kind of an opening and they were interviewing, but what was your relationship with fasting before you applied for the center?
Well, fasting, I mean, this is a longer story, but just to give you a little snapshot. So I always joke with Dr. Goldhammer about this, because he's a chiropractor and he created, such a, truly amazing, healing center. But it's nature cure. I mean, this is what we're taught in naturopathic medicine. So at Bastyr, it's very evidence-based, and we learn a lot about standard of care for safety. So everything we're learning is always about the medical standard of care and to understand that piece. But there's this gorgeous side where you're always learning about, like, okay, is med surgery really necessary at this point in time? What's the standard of care? How do we utilize lifestyle, nutrition, botanical medicine, all this other stuff, right? Physical medicine, right? All of that. And so when I was talking to Goldhammer, I was like, you created a nature cure clinic as a chiropractor, which I'm like, it's just so funny to me. And I think that's what attracted me to True North. But long story, even backing up, 10 years prior, so when I was still on my journey in Manhattan, in New York City, I found this article about fasting in Thailand, believe it or not. And it struck me. Like, I still remember it to this day, looking at it. And I remember thinking, that is one of the most intelligent things I've ever read in my life. And it just talked about the history of fasting, like what fasting does in the body. At that point, they didn't really know as much, but like there was a little bit about the physiology, about the health benefits, about like, all these, the epigenetic changes, like, reducing visceral fat. Like there was a couple of the key points, and I'm like, that makes so much sense to me. And so it always stuck in my mind about like, how can I really do this fasting? And I cleansed. I never water fast, but I've cleansed along the way. And then lo and behold, I met, Goldhammer. I learned about True North. I loved the whole food plant-based approach. It just made so much sense to me. I loved the fasting, even though I never did it, to be honest with you. So it was kind of a couple of pieces that I was like, this is perfect. Like, this is what I think my next path is. So.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to ask is, where did the relationship with whole food plant-based eating kind of come into the picture as you're going through that journey?
A couple of ways. So I would say I've tried everything. So in my journey, I have tried raw. I tried, moving into more of the macrobiotic diet. I did try whole food plant-based for a while, or vegan for a while when I was in Manhattan. I went back into eating meat, so I kind of, in my 20s, I did this kind of
experimented.
Yeah, exactly. I was experimenting with everything. And I mean, the truth is, I feel the best when I'm eating whole food plant-based. I mean, I always took that away, where I was like, oh, I don't know if I like this, or like, this doesn't feel right. And so it's been just me also experimenting. And then when I came to True North, and there was that little added piece, which actually I've never heard of before, is like no salt, no sugar, no oil. There was this other factor that I was like, oh, I get it. Like, I get this next layer up, or this next leveling up. And so it was more of like kind of a natural process for me, but it was always like in and out. I've never been like 100% perfect. It's just always been, it's a journey. I always say this to my patients too, is like, it's a journey as to like how, what you can do to keep on this path forward and be as optimal as you possibly can, and get back on and understand like the importance of using food as medicine. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the idea, too many people get attached to the idea of perfection, and it prevents them from actually trying to stick to it, or even eat, more plant-based foods. So I like to say, just meet people where they're at. Some people are ready to go 60, 70, 80, 90%. Some people are ready to go 100%. But if you are to expect that you should be 100% perfect all the time, people are like, well, I can't do that. So then they go in the complete opposite direction. Let me just eat fried food and chicken nuggets and all those things.
Exactly. And I'm sure you see this too, right? Like, sometimes when you hold space for someone that's not ready for 100%, what we see is patients will come to True North and they'll be like, okay, I'm giving up meat. I get it. I'm not doing that. Right. And then they come back and they're like, well, I'm still eating dairy, or I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And then they'll sit and they'll be here again. And they're like, I get the dairy part. I'm not doing dairy. So sometimes it's like, when you hold space for someone and they see themselves transform and feel better. And then they are like, okay, when I eat dairy, I feel like crap. So I actually want to feel good. Or when I do this, I feel like crap, but then I feel good. They're able to then have strength in that, right? Instead of me just saying, you need to do this, they're like, no, I need to do this because I feel the difference. And when you hold space, people will come and you'll have people say, I'm finally 100% because I want to be, right? So it's really powerful.
Yeah, I think it is the best way to help people get healthier or fitter in general is, hold space. Don't put any pressure on them. Let them make some progression. Let them give it a try. And then whenever they do at some point, because, life happens and they're newer to it, go back to eating like dairy or fish or eggs, or potentially missing a few days of workout, they realize the difference in how they feel. And I'm like, oh, not that great. I didn't know I was feeling that great before, but now I feel terrible. Let's just not do this as often, or potentially never again.
Yeah. And I think you probably hear this a lot. People don't know how bad they feel until they feel good, sometimes. So we hear that all the time. We're like, I knew I wasn't really doing that great, but I had no idea how bad I was feeling until now. I'm like, I feel so good. I can't believe I lived that long that way. Right. So, yeah.
There's always a new level to how good you can feel. Even though if you think you feel great, there's another level. Even if you're whole food plant-based and you exercise, add stress management and better sleep, there's an even new level of how good you can feel. So it is a beautiful journey to take on, because then you just realize how incredible you could have felt this whole time. But there's nothing better like today to get started
Agreed.
on feeling better.
Yeah, agreed.
So throughout your work at True North, you guys, a lot of people go to you guys. I would say, let me know if it's fair. A lot of people are really sick and are kind of like hoping to get that last straw. I'm assuming that there potentially is a little bit of people that are going there for prevention. But from my understanding, a lot of people go there because they're sick. They're trying to reverse a chronic illness, or they're dealing with a health issue. How do you guys navigate these different types of people and situations coming in?
So I would say over 11 years ago when I first started at True North, and I can't believe I've been here that long, but that's amazing. But I would say that's a true statement. So we actually did used to see a lot of people in the throes of polypharmacy, multiple medications, chronic inflammatory type of cases, even those rare zebras where people are like, no doctor knows what's going on. I really just need a Hail Mary. I'm here because it's the last straw kind of thing. So, but now, interestingly enough, as fasting has been, or intermittent fasting kind of, I think, put us on the map. And then, Dr. Goldhammer has been doing such an amazing job of like just speaking to individuals and educating them on the power of fasting, and actually whole food plant-based as well. No salt, no sugar, no oil. What has happened is we've seen so many more now people that are on the preventative end, or in that comfort zone of like, I'm healthy, nothing's showing up yet, but I just don't want to fall into chronic inflammatory type of concerns. And the way that we navigate it is really because we have such an amazing staff of doctors, where when people come in, what we can do, and because the way the True North is set up, you don't come just to fast. I mean, we're known as a fasting center, but actually we have, you can do water fasting, you can do juice cleansing, we do modified fast, we do food. If somebody wants to just come and eat and just kind of understand the nutrition piece. So there's multiple things people can do. When people come in, they are assessed by one of our doctors. They have to be, and we do a very thorough kind of not only intake, but a physical exam, blood work. So we can understand, is fasting really the next safest method for that person? And if it is, we have an amazing staff that can, guide them. And the beauty of the program is that when people are here, there's two things. And one I'm writing a book about, because I think it's important, and I don't think people talk about it enough, is that I think True North works so well is because not only do people fast, cleanse, get on a healthier diet, which in and of themselves, even if you do that, outside of True North, you're going to feel better. But then it's the other piece is like, you're in a place where you get to rest and you get the stress reduction benefit. Nobody talks about that, but when you put yourself into a parasympathetic, I think that is so powerful when people are able to detach, right? Like, and I mean, some people are working here when but they're still not in the throes of their daily life. So number one is you're able to break habits much more effectively, but also you heal more effectively, right? And so that's so beautiful. And you're watched by a team that is at your medical, fingertips if you need it. So there's a piece about that that's really powerful. And then the other thing that I just want to mention is that what we're looking at now, and Dr. Goldhammer, I think, has talked about it a couple of times, is that we're actually seeing massive improvement and benefit for people who are doing this preventatively. So we kind of always understood that people who are in chronic illness can get so much benefit, obviously, with fasting and then moving into a whole food plant-based diet. But now we're seeing longevity benefits, and actually I wouldn't even say longevity, because I don't necessarily love like just longevity, health span, right? So people are living longer, but they're living healthy longer. And that I think is so exciting when you think about like yourself or some of the people that you help get to that place of like, now they're in that preventative zone, using then fasting as a way that they can maximize even further, right? That's what's so cool. So that's how we kind of manage the complexity of what we see now at True North.
Yeah. So it seems like you guys just created like a perfect environment for people to come in and be able to change their habits and relax. And because, I'm sure you've seen it with Chuck on when we were at NHA, him and I had multiple conversations about stress.
Yes.
Like you can exercise, you can whole food plant based, but if you're stressed out of your mind, you're stuck in fight or flight, like you will get sick. You won't feel great. And over time, it'll take a toll on you. So I think for people to be able to disconnect, that adds such a massive element that I don't think people know the true impact of just being able to reduce the stress and step away from daily life on top of, fasting and or eating, whole food plant based and eating healthier foods.
Well, and can I say one thing on that? Just because I think it's so true. I'm just going to say one thing. And not only that, which I wonder if you see this in your practice as well, is that when people come back and I ask the question, what do you feel like is your biggest obstacle in health? Because people succeed here, right? But then they go back home and it's like, what's blocking you? What keeps blocking you? And I promise you 85 to 90% of the time, somebody will say stress, right? There's like deaths in the family, COVID, I got a promotion, I'm working more, or I got demoted and I'm so stressed out. Something like that happens in their lives where they're not taking time out. They're not paying attention to the stress load. And so what do? We eat. Right? We use alcohol, we use drugs, we're not sleeping as well. So then we're doing marijuana. It just starts to spiral, right? And then it becomes like, then they fall off the wagon and they're like, I can't do this anymore. And it's like, you can do it. We just need to identify it's the stress piece and then put in really good tools along the way. So I just wanted to add that because I think it's so important. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll add another piece to it. There's life elements that are out of our control. What I've seen with a lot of people, like we attract who we are, some very type A caregiver-esque energy. So I attract a lot of those people. The struggle to set boundaries adds a lot of stress to people, to people's life. And then they turn to food and they put themselves last. They don't have to take time to work out or potentially cook healthy food for them, but I'll cook healthy food for other people. So it is such a psychological journey to get someone to transform. It is not even about the workout plan or the meal plan necessarily. It's about like, let's deal with what's in your head and how you're navigating life and handling stressor. That's what makes the biggest difference.
I agree. I totally agree. Yeah.
So I'd love to ask you because, we had a dinner with Dr. Goldhammer, Plant Nutrition Project last year. It was him, Chef AJ, my wife, and like Mark and the whole gang. Surprisingly, he knew who Ivy was because he watches poker apparently. So because my wife was on TV for poker. So I don't know if he's gonna like me saying that, but it was a very funny moment. So when think of fasting, like what are the typical conditions that you guys treat and see people come with to the center? Just for the people listening that are potentially like, hey, fasting sounds cool. I'm dealing with this. Would it be helpful for me?
In all honesty, we've seen, I would say, the gamut of conditions, but the majority, I would say, that come to True North are in the categories of any metabolic type disease states. So these are individuals with, heart conditions, high blood pressure, diabetes type 2. You can't fast with type 1, but type 2, we see a lot of right now we're seeing a lot of cancer as well, specifically follicular lymphoma, just because we've seen pretty decent results from it, especially because many people, if they don't know, follicular lymphoma falls under that category where a lot of times, depending upon what stage it is or how much has progressed, there's a wait and a watch kind of period, and so it's one of those things where they're like, we don't have anything for you, we're just going to watch it to see when it gets worse and then we can treat it. And so in those kinds of situations, we have patients coming in and being like, I don't want to wait till it gets worse. Is there something else I can do? And prostate cancer falls under this too, the non-aggressive type. And so we're seeing more of these patients come in. But then I will say, like, we see a lot of also zebras. Like, we've been seeing a lot more like mast cell activation syndrome. We see a lot of, we've been seeing like, kidney disease, where we're definitely having to evaluate whether or not somebody's, safe enough to fast, because you can't really fast every single patient under that category. But so my point is, there's really kind of, no matter where somebody is in the spectrum of chronic inflammation in the body, so whether or not we're talking about neural inflammation, whether or not we're talking about cardiovascular inflammation, pulmonary disease states where we're seeing irritable bowel disease, Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, we're seeing a lot of irritable bowel syndrome, we're seeing a lot of, gastroparesis. I mean, so depending upon where you are, osteoarthritis patients. So we do see patients kind of in every sphere. And the reason I say chronic inflammation is because no matter where you are in the body and no matter what the diagnosis is, the underlying piece is chronic inflammation, right? Then we have to figure out why is the chronic inflammation there. But we see it in kind of every sector. But if I had to like think about maybe what's the most prominent, it's metabolic kind of disease states. So yeah,
because I figured cancer would be on the list because when my lead partner was going through her breast cancer journey, we had looked into going to True North at the time. Question: you familiar with Gerson therapy?
Yes.
Yeah. So she ended up kind of doing that just because it was back in the day we didn't have the funds necessary to take a flight and kind of go to the center. So she ended up doing Gerson because someone just basically lent us the full like $5,000 juicer to use to help her out in her journey. What is there commonalities between kind of Gerson and the fasting? Because I know you mentioned that sometimes you'll do like potentially like a cleanse or you use like whole foods for people that are not ready to transition.
Yeah, I would say there are similarities in terms of the fact that we do a juice cleanse. The difference is this that I understand. And so I don't know, I'll be honest with you, I don't know like exact day to day of what, they do in Gerson, but like I understand like the concept. The difference is that when somebody's here, they will not do like coffee enemas or enemas every single day, because one of the things that and I understand why Gerson would do that, because what they're really trying to do is get somebody to be releasing toxins, whatever that thing is that's causing or might be underneath the changes in cellular, kind of DNA and cellular impact that creates that cancer. But what we also realize is that what we try to do is actually decrease the amount of juice so that we're getting into more of an intermittent fasting state or like a lower caloric state. So, at the most, we're like probably around, I would say 500, 600 calories, where I think Gerson is a little bit higher, even with the juices, because they'll do more juices during the day. The other thing with the enemas, and this is with the microbiome research, is that, when you're doing coffee enemas and just like colonics every single day, your colon is a very, very populated area with beautiful microbes that we need really for immune system regulation. And so the question then is, and I don't know if we've actually, I haven't seen it yet on PubMed, but I don't think we've actually studied the impact of repeated, enemas on a long-term basis and what kind of change that could make. And I think it's more common sense, which I know doesn't translate necessarily to research and medicine all the time. But if you're disrupting that all the time, my question is whether or not we're doing potentially a disservice to one of our major impacts to our immune health. And so what we do here and why we don't do colonics is because we really don't want to disrupt that beautiful, kind of balance. And on top of it, we realize that by introducing high fiber, by introducing those nutrients from juice, and you are resting the digestive system, you're doing so much already. The question, it kind of begs itself, like, wouldn't that be, is that something that can be even more helpful, right, as somebody moves through their journey? And I don't, unfortunately, we don't have clear-cut studies to compare the two. So I this is more just from my own medical or just my own observations of that. But that's kind of the similarities and the differences that I know about.
Yeah. Okay. No, I was just curious out of personal interest, because I know she had done that like the last few months of her life. So when people come in for fasting, you talked about changing some lifestyle factors. What are some things that you guys get people to go through when they are doing a fast with you guys? Because what's the shortest and what's the longest that they can go for?
Well, I don't know if there's a shortest, only because we really monitor people day by day. So, if somebody
Okay.
walks in and I will say this, most people don't do anything less than 3 days at True North with a water fast. But if, let's say, day one, day two, they're just already not doing well, we're not going to push them into longer states of fasting. We're going to really listen to their bodies and kind of move along with wherever they need to be. But I will say the longest we do is 40 days. So it can be
Okay.
anywhere between 3 and 40 days of water fasting. And as I just mentioned, it really depends on the person. It depends on what they're coming in with, how much time they have, what their BMI is, like what their status is in terms of chronic inflammation, what they can handle, what their body is telling us on a daily basis. And so that's what determines kind of the journey that somebody is on when they're at True North.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I was curious, like because again, people have to take time off, right, to kind of get that time to relax and de-stress. And so we mentioned earlier, we talk about the microbiome. What is the relationship between fasting and a healthy gut microbiome?
There's a lot. And I would say it's not just the fasting, it's also the whole food plant-based and the high fiber type of diet that I think works so kind of beautifully integratedly. And so what I would say is what research is now showing, and this is mostly done with intermittent fasting studies, but we see that there is an improvement in biodiversity. So for those who might not be familiar with the microbiome and biodiversity, is that we have these microbes throughout our entire system, and we're actually more of an ecosystem than we are even human cells. So if we have 37 trillion human cells, we have like 370 trillion microbes that live amongst us. And so these microbes don't just serve a protective mechanism, they actually speak to our cells, and they have a vast array of basic functioning and helping us. They're a symbiotic relationship. We give to them, they give to us, and it's a beautiful kind of interchange. So when they are as biodiverse as possible, then not only is it healthy within that population, but we are healthier. So when our microbiome is more biodiverse, we are actually healthier. And so what we have seen happens during a fast is that your biodiversity actually improves. We also see that it's a time period where you can actually heal something called increased intestinal permeability, which can happen, which is kind of in kind of easier terms, like a leaky gut. So we have like one cellular lining in our intestinal tract, so we can heal that while we fast. We also see a ramping up of really great probiotic or commensal bacteria group, which means that those are really good guy helpers, because the majority of our microbiome is called opportunistic. So they can be good, and then they can also be like ruckus, kind of troublemaking teenagers if they're not happy. And so we don't want to get rid of those teenagers. We just want to make sure that they calm down. And so most of our microbiome is in that mode. So if we can build up our protectors that don't really cause too much problem, they have a greater control, right? They're like the caregivers. They can have a greater control of the rest of the microbiome. So that's also what fasting does. And then, of course, when you fast and you basically settle down that opportunistic bacterial group, and you boost up the really protectors, and you're actually healing inflammation, which is helping the overall, and you might be helping to heal a little bit of the leaky gut. What happens too is that when you bring in fiber or really high fiber foods, then what we're doing is, again, we're just kind of reestablishing healthy populations throughout, and that is the best way to maintain a healthy microbiome. So we're having, the healthier the microbiome, we're producing more short chain fatty acids. More short chain fatty acids, we have more antioxidant benefits, which we also have anti-inflammatory. These are anti-inflammatory molecules. So it's like all positive moving forward. So in my work at True North, the reason I got into microbiome is because I realized if somebody really wants to understand one of the major impacts that we have throughout the entire body of what fasting and whole food plant-based does, it's the effect that it has on the microbiome. It's amazing. So
So let me ask you a multi-layered question. I'm trying to keep
Okay.
track of it in my head as you're sharing this different
Should I
terms.
write this down?
So
I should probably write this down.
yeah, so the anti-inflammatory effect, the growth of those caregiving microbiomes
Mm-hmm.
and the control of these, teenager microbiomes that are
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
opportunistic,
Yeah.
would all three of those benefits come from just the fasting because you're giving a break to your body from digesting food? Because you wouldn't be taking in, a bunch of vitamins and nutrients and fiber from whole food plant-based eating
Mm-hmm.
if you're fasting. So would the benefit come from giving a break to the digestive system and from you not eating foods like processed sugar or processed and refined foods that would feed those opportunistic cells to turn them into like bad microbiome? Would that be where the benefit comes from?
So it's like you said, it's multi-layered. So one is as far as I understand, there's not yet an understanding of why biodiversity improves with a fast, because it makes sense, right? If you're eating a lot of fiber, of course you're going to improve biodiversity.
Yeah.
So that and a variety of fibers, right? So this is why we say don't just eat whole food plant-based. Getting like 30 to 50 different varieties of plants is a really like necessary throughout the week in order to build that biodiversity. But fasting, we're still really unsure. There's an idea that it might have an impact on like the genetic functioning, because there's over 3 million genes from the microbiome. So we have like around 24,000 genes that can be affected. Our microbiome has like over like 3 million. And so there could be some impact there with fasting that can really support that. You're absolutely right. With the fast too, what happens is that when you're not feeding the opportunistic bacteria group, you're kind of rebalancing already on a larger scale. So that's going to be helpful, because that actually helps even like the quote unquote good guys or the probiotics, the commensal ones, to come and to be more stable and more balanced. So there's that piece. And then there is in and of itself a anti-inflammatory benefit that fasting offers, because we're getting rid of visceral fat. So we're dropping inflammatory cytokines, which are inflammatory molecules that are in the system. And so there is that piece there. And then on top of it, I would say there's an added kind of component where it's exactly what you said. When you're not eating, saturated fat, animal protein, processed foods, you're not kind of feeding those opportunistic, teenagers to go kind of rogue or to go wild. You're also feeding the perfect food to help establish the good guys or the commensals. And on top of it, you're really helping to just create that biodiversity even more so. So, and all those foods are anti-inflammatory. We have natural phytonutrients in the food. And so, this is one example I always give is like, digestion, we all know creates free radicals, because it's just the process of digestion. The difference between like eating a beautiful apple and eating like a steak, you don't get any other properties from the steak, so that free radicals can build up. But yet, like when you eat that beautiful apple, it's already infused with all these phytonutrients, antioxidants that neutralize the free radicals. So right there, off the dock of when you're eating, you have all these massive benefits from the food itself. So it's both with fasting and with the whole food plant-based. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically a lot of the anti-inflammatory benefits would come from obviously the opportunistic cells in the microbiome being kind of neutralized, the good ones being able to multiply, like the caregiver one being able to multiply. But as a secondhand benefit, the fact that we're reducing the amount of visceral fat is going to automatically reduce the level of inflammation in the body.
Yeah.
I know that's potentially an oversimplistic story of how people explain it, but is there an element of, because you're not eating food, your body is not spending a lot of energy on digestion and is able to kind of use that energy elsewhere to potentially heal things in the body? Would that be accurate? Or I'm sure it's more complex than that, but is there an element of that?
It's definitely more complex. The way that I would look at it is that roughly around 80% of the energy goes into digestion per day. If we think about like 3 meals a day, or actually most Americans are probably eating snacks and
Oh yeah,
multiple.
more than 3. We're a snacking country, that's for sure.
Totally, right? And so if you think about 80% of the energy production from your beautiful cellular makeup, mitochondria, goes into this process, when that is able to rest, that energy in the cell can be utilized for other things. And when you fast, the great thing about fasting is that you are upregulating detox pathways, in your liver. You are upregulating, detox pathways, or the way that our kidneys are able to filter different kind of what's it called, processes, in our body. We're able to, upregulate autophagy, right? Which is not only the enhancement of our lysosomes and cleaning out cells, but we also are able to recycle things that we need and get rid of things that don't serve our bodies anymore. And we're going through, apoptosis, which is cellular death, which is a healthy, kind of cleaning out. So there is this beautiful, I think, process that happens with fasting. And I think there is a piece of that because we're able to really redistribute, all the ATP in our body, which is our energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and that's why, like, obviously not eating fiber at the point, but drinking water is going to be important to flush out some of those dead cells, and, moving the lymphatic system and kind of getting rid of all the toxins that are in the body. Because a lot of toxins are stored in visceral fat as well. And so you're also releasing that when you're losing some of the fat too.
Absolutely.
And that's why maybe people have some of those symptoms where they feel a bit like lightheaded or, a little bit weak or something like that.
Yeah. And I would say, we do not agree with or promote dry fasting, which is basically doing a fast without having adequate hydration.
Yeah. Just have a buildup.
And also, most of our body is this beautiful interchange between all our electrolytes and water. And so it's what you said. It's not only part of our circulation, right, our blood flow, but it's also part of our lymphatic system. It's part of our cellular makeup. So I mean, even cellular membranes are phospholipid, and so we have like a hydration part of it, and we have a fatty part of it. So everything in our system works on this beautiful kind of signaling aspect that needs water. So you really can enhance the fast because we're getting adequate amount of hydration, not too much, right? And definitely not too little. So
yeah, because you can throw off the electrolyte balance if you're drinking too much, because you're not taking in anything basically.
Exactly. Yeah. And on that, I'm just going to say this because I know somebody's going to have a question on it, because we have it all the time. People go through 40 days of water fasting. They do not need to take a single electrolyte, and they do not need to go on broth, and they do not need to do anything. So the concept that you can't go a long time without taking some sort of electrolyte is not true. Do people sometimes need to be infused with a broth, or drink a broth, or switch over to juice to have those electrolytes? Absolutely, that happens when you see, I think we've seen over 25,000 patients, in the years that True North has been open. So of course there's going to be some patients that need it, but there are people that go through 20 days of fasting, 30 days of fasting, 40 days of fasting, where they do not need a single shift in their protocol. They are resting, they're sleeping, they're drinking just pure, purified water or distilled water. And so it is possible. Our body is so brilliant and able to balance that out for us. So.
Yeah. And I think also a big element is like, they're not working out. They're not running and sweating, a ton of water every day. They're actually resting. So I can see like how you wouldn't need any of that.
Right.
I'd love to talk about I would say we said the word autophagy. I was like, I feel like we have to say it at least once in this podcast because we're talking about fasting. Yeah. So just to kind of summarize it for some people that potentially may be newer to that concept, what is it and how long does it take before it actually happens? Because some people say fast for 12 hours and then you start to get some of the benefits. Some people say fast for 3 days before you start to get some of the benefits.
Yeah. So what autophagy is basically an upregulation of a normal process that we really see. It's just at a level that really allows for cellular cleanup. And so why I say that is because every day our livers are always working, right? Our kidneys are always working. Our digestive system is always working. Like we're always breathing, we're always sweating. So these are ways where we get rid of toxins in our system, and it's beautiful, the kind of the methodology of how that happens. But what our cells do is that we have something called lysosomes in our cells, which they're kind of like the house cleaners of our cells, and so that's always happening. But as you can imagine, and I use this analogy often, is that imagine if like I had 20 people come into my office right now, and what I'm trying to do is clean up around 20 people. I probably would do an okay job, but can you imagine if I kicked everybody out of my office and then did a really strong cleanup? I'd be so much more effective. And so I give that analogy because that's kind of what happens with fasting, right? We're not taking as much kind of in through most of the toxicity that we see is through food and drink and sodas and all that stuff. So we're not taking that in. So our bodies are able to get deeper into that cleaning and this process of different genes turning on, which actually revs up this cellular cleansing that happens. And the importance of that is, if you can imagine anything, any space that you can ever think about, who's that woman, Maria Kondo, right? She talks about like organization, right? It's kind of the same idea, is that if these cells are clean, they're going to function better. Your reception is going to be better, right? If you don't have fat kind of blocking even the cells, when insulin drops on a cell, it can signal glucose to come into the cell, right? Like these are all processes that happen more effectively. So autophagy is that. And also, what people don't really, I don't think, talk about enough is that autophagy is not only cellular cleansing, it's also recycling of things that we really do need. So it's not only just getting rid of what doesn't serve our body and going through like cellular death and, killing off like senescent cells, which are, already on their way to die, but we're getting rid of them in a faster rate. It's also, we utilize and we recycle things that we need. So it's what I want to say is like, it's an efficient, right, way to really help the body function as best as it can. There's a lot of, I would say, I don't know if controversy is the right word for it. There's just a lot of kind of uncertainty as to like where or when it really like kicks into gear in terms of the level of autophagy that we see with long-term fasting, because we're not doing intermittent fasting. We're doing more, like I said, anywhere from 3 to 40 days. I think one of the more consistent timings that I've seen is like you're always going through it, but when you hit that mark, it's like kind of after hour 17 is when the body really gets into this full on cellular cleansing state, and then obviously it continues as you're fasting. So
okay, so like that 17-hour mark roughly.
Roughly.
Really start to see more of that process kick in.
Roughly. Yeah. I've seen people talk about the fact that like, you really are going through this, autophagy all the time. It's just like where that ramping up is. And, I've also seen a study where they said like it probably happens maybe even closer to after 12 hours, because that's also where we start really ramping up ketosis as well, when we look at the digestive kind of changes that happen with fasting. And that's why even intermittent fasting is so powerful. Like, right. What we hear about is like, really try for at least a 12-hour fast. Like that's the standard, that's the basic. And then if you can go 14 hours, 16 hours, or there's 18-hour. And so it kind of builds from there. But there's, like I said, there's a little bit of when you look at the PubMed and the research behind it, I feel like I've seen different hours, throughout the research that I've done on it, but there's a little bit more consistency around hour 17. So.
Okay. So I have a question for you, and I never hear this topic being talked about, maybe because I don't listen to a ton of podcasts. I like to record them. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts. So there has to be like a mental / emotional hurdle to fasting, not from the element of like, hey, you're not going to eat food for X period of days, but because people use food as a coping mechanism for stress or for not dealing things that's happening inside of their head, inside of their heart. So what have you guys seen in terms of patients and navigating that when people are so used to, I feel terrible, I feel stressed, let me eat something. Now it's like, you can't. So how do you find that people deal with that?
It's such a great question. And what I will say is this: when you talk to individuals, I would say even us doctors, face this to a certain point where when you talk to individuals, it's so hard to fast at home. Because at home, you're in your normal environment. You're more exposed to everything you just mentioned. There's more, intrusions. There's you have access to all your technology, everything, right? So it's a lot harder. When you come to True North, you make a decision to come. I think when people put money behind it, in truth, like when you're like, I'm booked, I'm going to be there, I'm spending money to be there. There is a little bit of a flip of a switch that goes on with the body. And the other thing I will say, and I can't measure this, but I felt it. I'm not a runner, but I walked a half marathon before, and I ran probably half of it. And for all the viewers out there who has ever done any sporting events, when you're in it, I don't know, that was the only time when I was running this half marathon or walking it that I was like, I think I could do a marathon. And I'm not a runner. So but you know what? It was the energy of everybody. I mean, there was hundreds of people there running with me. And it was something about the fact that everybody there was in the same goal or that same mindset. I have heard it multiple times at True North. I think it's a similar thing. It's like you're surrounded by fasters. Everybody is fasting. Your whole support team is there to help you fast. So it's a different energy when people get here. It's a different mindset, So when people arrive, they're like, I'm ready for this. I got it. I'm ready for it. In the 11 or so years that I've been here, the only time that I've really seen somebody struggle, and I know this is going to surprise some people, is actually in the newer generations, because what I've seen more of is not what you said, which I would totally expect, but I have seen people say, how do I do nothing? This is so boring. I don't know what I'm and we have 2 lectures going on. We have stretching classes a night. I mean, people can read. I mean, you can bring your computer if you want to, but we're so used to go, do, be. I'm going to be here. I'm going to go here. I'm going to do this. It's it's an ADD type of society that we're building, where I have seen that more, where people are like, I can do the no food. I just feel like I'm bored out of my mind because I don't have enough stimuli, which is, I think, fascinating. But that's,
Yeah, I can definitely see that. That's why I do monthly digital detoxes.
I love
to train myself to do nothing for 7 days. I can definitely see that with the new generation.
Yeah.
Now that's interesting, because when I've done certain things like some fasts or some long periods of time where I've forced myself to do nothing, it can get emotional to just be in your own head and have to kind of deal with whatever comes up. But it seems like the element of community helps with you just feeling connected, and not necessarily having that distraction, but having that deeper bonding with people.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay, that's beautiful. That was one question. I was like, no one ever talks about this, but it has to be emotional to not be able to turn to food for stress. But if you are, like I said, in your house versus a controlled environment, I can see how that would make a massive difference.
The majority of people, I think you're 100% right, because the majority of people that come, there is many of them that will say, I tried to do this at home. How many of Goldhammer's podcasts have I read? Or I watched you on Chef AJ so many times, and it's like, I tried to do this at home. I can't. I can't make it past 24 hours. I can't make it past 48 hours. So I think you're absolutely right. There is a component there of that. But I think when people come, and it's almost like going on vacation too, right? It's like once you've committed, you're like, well, I'll go, and I'm going to do the thing, and I'm there, and I'm being supervised. I might as well make the most of it, so yeah.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, to me, when you pay attention. I don't like doing anything for free. I don't like getting anything for free. If I value it, I will forcefully pay for it, even though sometimes people don't want me to, just because I know I will pay more attention because I've invested energy into it.
Yeah, totally. And I say this with all honesty for patients too. If somebody was just saying I'll just show up for you with accountability, that's great. And the more accountability and the more community we have, there's always going to be benefit to that. But the people that I see succeed the most are the ones that say, I'm going to commit to this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign up for coaching calls, or I'm going to sign up for, a constant, something where I'm paying to go to it, because that's a motivation factor that I'm going to show up. And when I show up, I really want to utilize it. So it's something that gets people there, but then it's kind of like the spiraling effect, right? Like as long as you're moving a little bit, then you're going to start doing it because you want to, and you don't need that motivation, but we all need a little bit of like push in the beginning. So yeah.
Yeah, I did a podcast on that. I called it transformation flywheel. When you're trying to move a massive flywheel at first, there's a lot of effort. You have to keep your hands on it and push. But over time, eventually you can just have a finger on there and spin it once you've been consistent enough with it, right? Because the momentum is taking the majority of the work from you. But it's always a bigger effort at the beginning to make a big change like that. So love to ask you, earlier, we talked about, the types of people that go for different condition, like prevention versus kind of being sick. There's been an increase, and I talked about this with a few people at the NHA conference, an increase in the biohacking community, people that love to optimize themselves. Do you think that that's helped to bring more people in to True North in terms of prevention, of people that are just simply looking to optimize themselves, or people that, potentially, as people are getting older, they have more friends and family that are getting sick and they're like, hey, I want to make sure I take care of myself so I end up in the same position as them?
I would say yes. And the reason why I think that is because in the last, how many years? I'm going to say probably last 3 years, I have seen people categorize themselves as like professional fasters. And what I mean by that is that we have seen at True North quite a few people that are saying, I'm in that biohacking world. And what I'm trying to do is, they've gone all over the world. They've gone to Australia, Thailand. There's clinics, I guess, in like Spain and in Germany. There's one in Turkey that I heard about. So people have gone pretty much all over the world to fast. And what I consistently hear is that now that we're in that world, I guess, like our True North has made like a name for it. They obviously want to try it because it's so different than how anybody fasts, because nobody, as far as I understand to this day, nobody is doing what we're doing, which is saying what we offer is for you to have total rest. We're having your just plain distilled water. We are allowing the body to do what it does, which it has an inherent ability to heal. And we're giving it that space to do so. We're watching it and we're making sure you're going through this very safely, but we're allowing the body to do that. Whereas what other places that I hear about are doing is like what we talked about. Like some people are just doing juices. Other people are doing broths, or they're doing like modified fast. They're putting supplements and electrolytes, and they're doing enemas, and they're doing all this stuff where they're helping. But what could be happening, right? And where this, I think, has so much power, I think, and power is maybe not the right word, healing effects, is that people will leave and they say, I totally get why you guys do what you do. This is definitely far surpass what I've witnessed elsewhere. Because number one, I think you walk away with a greater appreciation for what the body can do. You also understand how potentially dangerous it could be to do and to kind of manipulate the body based on what we think, where it could then cause other issues to come up, right? And I don't think you're allowing like the true healing effects of like what the body can fully do unless you really step away and kind of hold space for it to happen. There's a spiritual part to it too, which I know for some people is kind of like woo-woo, but like there's really something about like being in a space where you're so just in a relaxed mode and you really just allow the body to do what it does. Because, that's another thing. People are always like, we're working out, we're doing stretching, we're doing exercising, we're sweating. I mean, there's so much that they do. And I honestly, some people just say like, they didn't feel as good as they do after doing like just a plain water fast. So there's something to the difference for sure.
Yeah. I think there's beauty in its simplicity. And I think that the people that are trying to do all those things that you just said weren't mentally ready to sit down and do nothing. Like it is so much easier to work out every day than it is to sit down and do nothing. Like
I
no
agree.
TV, no distraction. It
I agree
is
with you. Yeah.
even someone that doesn't work out would find it extremely hard to sit down and do nothing with no distraction.
I totally agree with you. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's why we book a 2-day campsite and I sit in my camping chair and I look into nature all day long and I do nothing. It is the most, I'll work out for 4 hours any day. Sitting down in a chair for all day and doing nothing is very, very hard.
But kudos
It's tiring.
to you. Yeah, but I love that you do that. I mean, I really do think that's a prescription everybody should do, is like if 7 days is too much for somebody, like even like 2 days every month doing something like that could be so powerful to every aspect of your life. So yeah.
Yeah. Everyone I've ever spoken to that has actually tried it for like even a full day has been like, wow, this is a game changer. You feel fully refreshed.
For sure.
So I'd love to talk about if there's about some certain studies, because I know the world of fasting has evolved greatly over the past few years. Is there any new emerging studies or trends in lifestyle medicine or plant-based nutrition that excites you right now?
Oh gosh, there's so much. I'll be honest with you. I'm so I'm a little bit more of like a microbiome nerd than anything else. So that's what I think is really exciting, because since 2007 with the Human Microbiome Project, we've just seen such an explosion. And so I just did a conference where, we're learning about, some of these really, unfortunately, like strains that were missing in newer generations because of medications, lifestyle, nutrition, all of that. So we're starting to understand more the impact that the microbiome has even on sleep, on, depression, anxiety. And so I think it goes hand in hand, because truthfully, when we talk about nutrition and whole food plant-based, and when we talk about like sleep and stress, I always show people the foundations of health, because you can't do one without making sure other foundations are in place. I love when people eat whole food plant-based, but if that's all they're doing and they're not paying attention, like what you were saying, before, is like when you're not paying attention to your community, are you waking up with a sense of purpose? Are you, like what's your motivation every day? Like, are you exercising? Are you exercising too much, too little? Are you sleeping? These have to be in place, because it's your entire foundation. So that, I think, comes very much through when you look at these microbiome studies, because they really are digging down deep and saying, why are we having this, unfortunate, like upward spiraling of chronic illness, diabetes, obesity, like anxiety, depression. Like, is it just the food? And the food is a huge part of it. I mean, there's no denying it, but it can't be just the food, right? Like there has to be these other pieces, and maybe the food part is like connected for sure. But then it's like, of course, it's like we're sleep deprived as a nation, right? We were just talking about it. We're always constantly on the go, and we're not taking time, to really appreciate nature. We're getting rid of nature, right? Like all over. So there's these little pieces. So I'm really, really excited about where microbiome research is going, because we're understanding so much more about the impact. Like even there was an MD that is really studying peak performance of athletes even, and what they found is like with those ultra marathon runners, or triathletes and things of that nature, we're seeing actually really big disruptions in their microbiome, and even leaky gut kind of or increased intestinal ability, I should say, like in those. And so it poses the question then too, is like, well, how do we then help those athletes recover? Or also, are we helping them with their training, or how can we help them with their training so that doesn't help, and so that they can have really more a successful type of careers or a successful type of training program. So it's really exciting. That's what's exciting for me. So
yeah, let's talk about that for a sec. There's an element of people putting too much in one bucket. Like if they've found it within themselves to master their nutrition, eat whole food plant-based, they're so excited over it. They're like, I'm not even going to try to focus on these other areas because I'm probably going to suck at it. I'm just going to go all in on this and be proud of myself for owning that area, which is a beautiful thing. But it's a lot better to be not as perfect within that area, but add in some exercise, some stress management, improve the sleep, even 20%, like all those elements will make a far greater difference in someone's health and health span and longevity than if they just own one specific area and neglect all the rest.
Mhm.
You need to move your body. You need to, move your lymphatic system. You need to drink water. You need to sleep. You need to manage your stress. As for the peak performance things, like I'm heading off to a scouting event to try and get a professional contract to play overseas for basketball.
Oh, awesome.
In Asia or Europe. I've been training 4 or 5 hours a day for the past 3.5 months. There's nothing healthy about elite performance and peak performance. I think a big element of sports at that high of a level is, can you recover faster so you can train harder and then do all of those things you talked about to minimize the damage so that when you are older, you're not completely destroyed from training like a complete machine, basically. Because I think it's really hard to have health span and longevity if you're training 15, 20 hours a week.
Right.
And just constantly beating yourself up. It's hard to recover from that. Like I nap every day, I sleep 9 hours every night, and still my recovery, it's a fight to get to it.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think, I mean, even if you, I don't know, for those of you who watch Rich Roll, and like, I think he's been really open too. And I don't know the exact story, but he's done all that ultra and like he's held some health concerns too and recovery. And he talks about recovery. And I think the one thing I really appreciate about people coming out and really just to talk about this is I think that's where we start to really evaluate as well. Like, can we make this work and how do we not put as much pressure on that too? Because I think it also says is there another reason too why we're being pushed so hard with those elite athletes too? Like, is it necessary, for like, I just, it's questions that I ask. It's not like definitives. It's just more of like, why are we pushing to that high level? Like, what's the point of it when really it's about like and is there something else that's driving that as well? So, because the question is like, is your health worth that piece? And it might be for some people, but yeah, there's a lot that opens up a whole can of other kind of, I think, philosophical questions for me too.
Yeah, it is a very interesting topic. As much as I feel that humans are adapting to, it's that you mentioned losing potentially some certain elements of like more people are sick, more people are dealing with issues as we're kind of evolving.
Yeah.
There's that really small segment of the world where athletes are getting faster and better and stronger at an earlier age. And you look at the world records being broken. It's just, it's getting crazy to keep up with it. 18-year-old kids now are like, with athletes when they were in their 40s back in the day, like 30s and 40s. So I think both elements are adapting to the worst, and then it's getting really fast and really strong, and it's hard to keep up with both at that point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Little side talk. I have to talk about that.
No, I love it. And I can go further. It's just then we're really getting into like philosophical type of.
I love those conversations.
I do too.
Yeah. So, I know we're coming up on our time for the episode. So I wanted to ask you, one last questions, because we covered a lot today about microbiome, about fasting. We talked about, mindset and kind of how the gut microbiome works. For the people that are listening that potentially are maybe newer to that world, because obviously if they know about fasting, they already know about True North, potentially already looked into you guys, but you into the center. But what is one piece of advice you'd want to give to someone who wants to take control of their health and doesn't know where to start? Like, just think of the typical American living in middle of the US. I'm from Canada, but I learned that a lot of them live in the middle of US.
I would say this, one of the biggest questions I ask, or not biggest, one of the questions I ask my patients is, and I mentioned this before, what is your biggest obstacle to your health? And what I think that does is that it allows somebody to evaluate their environment and to be able to say, you know what, it's a stress piece. It's the fact that I don't have access to fresh food. It's the fact that I am traveling and I don't know how to eat, right? So yeah. It's what's coming up there. once you have that like answer, you are better able to then say, okay, so food is really my biggest issue. Or if food isn't your issue, it's because, you know, you need to exercise, let's say, like because you're not moving your body because you don't know how, you know, what to do or how to do it. I think what that does is that opens up then for you to be able to seek out where you need the biggest support and who you need to, you know, kind of follow up with. And the one thing I will say is for the majority of individuals, if we're looking like across the board, because what I do hear is that when you're in middle America, in a lot of places, there are places called food deserts. So, you know, sometimes it's not just that you can say to somebody, go whole food plant-based, and that's going to be the answer, because they don't have that access to
or
that.
bananas like $5.
Exactly. Right. It's exactly. But when you ask that question, I think what it does is it can dial down to see like what's the first step you can do in your life that might help improve your health one step. Because what I find is like what I mentioned is like sometimes people just need one step after another, and that creates that spiraling. I would also say that reaching out and getting support and really asking questions based on what you find can be a really good avenue next. So meaning like, you know, like NHA is like a really good website, right? Like our Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine is a really great website. Like looking at different movies you can find online for different health, you know, information, especially in the whole food plant-based community. Like True North, you know, has a lot of really good information. So there are like websites too that you can go to, which kind of kickstarts things for you. And then you can find like NHA, you know, you have different people that they work with that you can find support with. So I think that would be my first, my first advice, is because sometimes what I even find this at True North, and we, as you probably have heard from Goldhammer and other people, like, I mean, people that find us are already ready to change, right? So this is not like average, you know, American or average person of the world. It's really somebody ready for change. So if I even think about somebody who's before that, it's really about understanding like what do you feel like you have control over that you can change in your life, and that will make that first step. Because what I find is that even if somebody's like, I can drink more water, perfect. If somebody's more hydrated during the day, they're going to feel better already. Like, especially if they're only drinking a little bit and then they drink more. So then if they can, and then the other thing is we talked about mindset, right? So if I say I'm going to commit to 1 glass of water more every day or more hydration, and I'm doing that for a month, that creates more trust in myself that I can do at least that one thing. And then you can build on that. So what is my next obstacle? You know, it's not moving. So can you walk maybe just every day? That's something easy to do, right? Like that's something that potentially somebody can do. And if walking is not the thing, can you be stretching? Can that be a next? So anyway, building on those.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I can't remember who said this, but you want to build an undeniable stack of wins that you can stand on, because a lot of people potentially, have tried to lose weight, have tried to eat healthier, have tried to exercise and do all those things. And they kind of reinforce to themselves that they are not the type of person to do what they say that they're going to do. Totally. And you need to reverse that through small wins and small action. As you mentioned, is perfect. Like just drinking 1 cup of water more, taking a few more steps, potentially stretching, and not committing to, a full Ironman training plan from the start when you haven't worked out in 10 years. And you're just starting small and building yourself up.
Yeah. No, I love that. A stack of wins. Yeah. You said that so much more beautifully, but yeah, that's exactly what I love, that stack of wins.
Yeah. It helps people build themselves up, because everyone needs to be built up. Even people that are highly successful have to build themselves back up.
Agreed.
So Csilla, last question for you. Mm-hmm. Where can listeners learn more about your work and connect with you?
Awesome. So if anybody needs or wants to reach out, you can find us on True North Health website. That is www.healthpromoting.com. Not only am I a supervising doctor at True North, but we also do coaching. So we do nutrition and lifestyle coaching. So that's a place you can find. My work is also on www.drchillaveress.com. So that's another place where it's just my personal kind of work, but it ties in with True North very beautifully. So
Beautiful. Well, I'll make sure that all those links are down below in the description, so you guys can just easily go click on them and go show some love. Well, so I appreciate you. Thank you very much for taking the time of recording with me. And everyone, hope you enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you in the next one.